There becomes a moment in every soul's journey when the life you've built no longer fits the person you're becoming. A moment where your intuition grows louder than your fear. When the signs become impossible to ignore. When the masks begin to fall away and you realize you were never lost, you were remembering. Welcome to the Heyoka Shaman Podcast, a space for seekers, healers, empaths, mystics, survivors, and old souls navigating the path of awakening. Together, we'll explore spirituality, intuition, shadow work, healing, consciousness, energy, transformation, and what it truly means to walk between worlds. We'll have conversations about the right things that most people are afraid to talk about: the dark nights, the spiritual awakenings, the grief, the healing, the gifts, the lessons, and the profound journey of coming home to yourself. This isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you've always been beneath the conditioning, the wounds, the expectations, and the fear. If you've ever felt different, if you've ever questioned reality, if you've ever known there was more waiting for you beyond the life you've been told to live, this podcast is for you. The awakening has already begun. The question is, are you ready to answer the call? Welcome back to the podcast. This is episode number 7 of the Heyoka Shaman Podcast series, season 1. And this episode is called Healing the Inner Child and Returning Home to Yourself. So this one's quite a deep one for anyone with any childhood trauma. So we're going to give you some more insight on, the work that's required when you had or experienced a childhood that was quite traumatic, painful, and you have all these kind of inner child wounds from that experience. So we're going to dive a little deeper into that and, encourage you on how you can heal from those experiences and they don't hold you back anymore. Let's go. Welcome back to the Heyoka Shaman Podcast. I'm your host, Hales. Over the last 6 episodes, we've walked a powerful path together. We stepped out of the spiritual closet. We answered the awakening call. We survived the dark night of the soul. We discovered that our triggers can become our greatest teachers. We learned to trust our intuition. And in our last episode, we explored the ongoing conversation between the ego and the soul. Today, we're traveling even deeper because beneath our fears, beneath our triggers, beneath the voice of the ego, there is often a younger version of ourselves. A child who simply wanted to feel safe, to feel loved, to feel accepted. Today's episode is about meeting that child with compassion, not to stay in the past, but to free your future. Welcome to episode 7, Healing the Inner Child, Returning Home to Yourself. So I want to discover what is the meaning of the inner child. What is the inner child? There's so many spiritual concepts about this, and we want to get down to what actually is your inner child. The inner child isn't about acting like a child. It's a way of describing the emotional experiences we carry from our earlier years in childhood. Our first experiences of love, safety, belonging, rejection, fear, joy, connection. And whether we realize it or not, those early experiences shape how we see ourselves and how we move through relationships. If you grew up feeling emotionally safe, your nervous system often learns that the world is a trustworthy place. If you grew up with criticism, unpredictability, neglect, or instability, your nervous system may learn to stay alert for danger, even when you're now safe. That isn't weakness, it's adaptation. I want to talk about the wounds we carry, these deep internal wounds that we subconsciously carry and we may not be consciously aware of. So many spiritual teachers speak about core emotional wounds. While everyone's experiences are unique, many people recognize themes such as I am not enough. I have to earn love. If I make mistakes, I'll be rejected. My needs don't matter. I have to take care of everyone else. These beliefs often begin as ways to make sense of childhood experiences. As adults, they can quietly influence our relationships, our careers, our boundaries, and the way we speak to ourselves. Healing doesn't mean pretending those experiences never happened. It means recognizing that old beliefs like these don't have to define the rest of your life. So why does awakening bring childhood to the surface? We want to talk about that and explore that a little bit deeper now, because when we go through a spiritual awakening, a lot of our childhood trauma is triggered or is brought up for healing. So many people are surprised when a spiritual awakening brings unresolved childhood emotions to the surface. But it makes sense because awakening is about becoming more conscious. Because we're consciously co-creating our reality, right? So we want to remove all the blocks, that are causing us to manifest things that we subconsciously do not want in our reality. So the spiritual awakening is triggered, and then all the childhood trauma is triggered. So you can get that gunk out. It's like a detox, spiritual detox, I guess you could call it, And when we're healing from, anything physical that we can see, not spiritual or emotional, I feel like, you're like, if you're sick with the flu, you get all the gunk out. And it's the same with emotional wounds that we cannot see. So it's just a part of healing. It's part of the process. And it makes sense, right? Because as your awareness goes, as your awareness goes, right? That was channeling. You begin noticing old patterns that once operated automatically. So it's like a reflex action, right? This isn't happening because you're moving backwards. It's happening because your mind and body are finally ready to process what once might have felt too overwhelming. So, when we have those triggers and emotional wounds there, we go through a traumatic experience and that wound stays there until we're ready to actually process it. And the emotions get trapped in our body, in our DNA, and sometimes in our fascia. And it's not until you come across somebody on your path that touches that bruise, that triggers that wound, which we talked about in one of the previous episodes. So it's happening because your mind and body are finally ready to process, these emotions. And sometimes healing means feeling what you've spent years trying not to feel, trying to avoid. And that's okay. So I want to talk about you stepping into and becoming the safe adult you needed as a child. Because one of the most powerful shifts in healing happens when we stop waiting for someone else to rescue us. This is like the hero's journey. I talk about the hero's journey a lot, in my YouTube channel, because it is becoming the safe adult you needed, becoming your own hero, not waiting for someone else to rescue you. So instead, we begin offering ourselves the kindness, the protection, and the encouragement we may have needed when we were younger. And that can look like speaking to yourself with compassion instead of criticism, resting without guilt, setting boundaries that protect your well-being, and asking for support when you need it. Celebrating your progress instead of only noticing your mistakes. This isn't selfish. It's an act of self-respect. I want to talk about now forgiveness and acceptance. Because healing the inner child doesn't always mean reconciling with people who hurt us. Sometimes forgiveness is possible, sometimes distance is healthier. Only you can decide what is right for your situation. What healing does ask of us is this: to stop allowing the past to dictate every decision in the present, to recognize what happened, to honor our experience, and then, when we're ready, to choose how we want to move forward. Healing is less about changing the past and more about changing our relationship with it. So, I want to talk about the practical steps that we can take. So, this week on your journey, I'd like to invite you to just try something simple. Find a quiet place. Close your eyes. Imagine yourself as a child. Notice your expression. Or if you're imagining yourself as a child, notice your childhood self's expression. Notice what you might need as a child. And without trying to fix anything, simply say to your inner child, I'm here. You're safe with me. You don't have to carry this alone anymore. Sometimes healing begins with being present for ourselves in ways we never experienced before. It's very important to have self-love and love that inner child and give yourself the love your parents might not have been able to give you. And we just have to have compassion for everyone on their journey. And we might have come into this life to break the pattern, be the generational curse breaker. Your bloodline might be carrying years and years and years of patterns and trauma, and you might be the one strong enough to face it. You might have been the chosen one to deal with this pattern and say, it ends with me. It ends with us. So, a closing message for you as we finish today's episode, I want to remind you of something important. Healing isn't about becoming someone new. It's about removing the layers that convinced you that you weren't enough to begin with. The child within you doesn't need perfection. They need presence, they need patience, and they need love. And today you have the opportunity to become the safe place you've been searching for all along. Thank you for joining me for episode 7 of the Heyoka Shaman Podcast. If today's conversation touched your heart, share it with someone who may be on their own healing journey. And if you're enjoying the podcast, I'd be ever so grateful if you'd follow the show and leave me a review. It helps these conversations reach more people who may need them. Until next time, protect your energy, heal what calls for your attention, align with your truth, and remember, the journey home isn't about finding someone else. It's about remembering yourself. I'm Hales, and I'll see you again between the worlds. Thanks for listening.